All right, we are live. I guess I'll start it with a prayer instead of asking people. That's always better. So I'll start. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. I thank you for how many blessings. We thank you for the opportunity we have to meet together for this class. Please bless us to be able to get all the information that we need to, that we may be able to learn this lesson. And we love you and thank these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Well, Ben, I was telling Susie how appropriate it is that I have this lesson. So let's see. So the first thing we're supposed to talk about is just a little bit of an overview about what the the case was about. So we know that it is about Noodles and Company, and Kennedy, the owner and co-CEO of it, is now in a position where he has to try to figure out how to grow the company so that it can continue to compete with the market and continue to grow at the growth that they had planned. And from what I saw, there were three options that they were trying to figure out which to go with. And that's kind of where we were with the case. Does anybody have any input just initially about the case?
I love that restaurant. I go there all the time.
I've never been to one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. So
Ben, are you muted? Can't hear what you're saying.
Ben, do you have a phone that you could? Okay.
We'll be back.
Yeah.
Still can't hear you.
Okay.
We'll start moving a little bit. Yes. And then if Ben can get it figured out, we'll listen to him. In and out. So the first question that we want to discuss is just the type of restaurant. It's a fast casual segment. Do we know what fast casual segment means? Like what type of restaurant?
Well, so it's, I gotta think. So it's like quality food. It's good quality food, but it's fast. It's kind of like a fast food restaurant in that how fast it gets it to you. You don't have to like sit down and then order and then wait, half an hour or whatever for it to come to you. It's fast, and that's why it's nice. It's good quality food, and then it's casual dining. It mixes the two.
Right, and then the other big difference is that typically in a fast casual, you order from the counter instead of ordering at your table. Yeah. Make it kind of expedite the process a little faster, order and then go sit down. So we just kind of for a second talked about the specific challenge facing Noodles and Company. What are some of the other challenges that go along with that?
Well, they talked about being the first into the market or being best in the market, like which one they needed to focus more on, whether they needed to get there first into whatever market they were looking at, or whether it was okay if they weren't there maybe the first, but they were the best. They had the best location. They had the best everything else. And so they talked about that problem.
Yeah, that was definitely a decision that they had to make. That's actually one of the questions later on in this lesson uh, that we're going to discuss. So that is one of them. And then it says external and internal turmoil, external threats and internal turmoil. So for external threats, obviously it's the competition that they have, other restaurants in the area, other things that are growing around them. And then internal turmoil it has a lot to do with one of the next questions is how did they do when they first opened?
Yeah, they didn't do very well.
No, they didn't do very well. Why didn't they do very well?
Well, they had no idea they weren't doing very well. They weren't set up well yet. They were still working out like kinks like that. They didn't really focus on the customer or something. I remember they like went and surveyed customers to get ideas of what they should do better. But then the part I got stuck on was they didn't know they were doing bad so they couldn't change anything because they didn't have like their accounting done at all. So they had no idea that they were losing money.
Yeah, they were definitely poor performances in the beginning. A lot had to do with, like you said, is focusing more on costs and stuff like that than the customer. And I've seen that a lot. Is when people think that those items are more important than their customers or their guests, then they typically will fail in that situation. Um, so, what was the organizational structure and team culture, and how did that impact their early results? So, like when they first started, what was their culture and what was their organizational structure?
There wasn't one really. Did it really mention one? I mean, it was just kind of like, okay, here's
Sounds
a
good,
cook.
Ben.
Here's
Um,
whatever.
yeah, pretty much. It was just like you had a manager and some other couple supervisors or managers, and everybody kind of did their own thing. It wasn't team oriented at all. The other thing that I noticed was that the food was pretty bad. That they just had, it was like a buffet from what I can imagine, but not really like a buffet, but like they cooked batches and then just served stuff, and then later on, obviously, they decided to change it so that they were cooking for each individual meal instead of having just nasty noodles sitting in a big pot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I can describe it. um, so here's a question about developing a business. Is working full time as an employee while developing a new business a good idea or a bad idea?
I don't know. In my mind, it's probably a bad idea. For one, you're not gonna focus very well on either aspect. You're gonna be divided. You're gonna be like, you could get a call while you're at work about something from the business you're developing, and so you like have to leave work, or you don't leave work, and then whatever that problem was, it's not gonna get fixed, and so I don't think that's a smart idea. I think a new business is gonna take up a lot of time. I mean, I don't know because I've never started my own business, but
Yeah, I mean, new restaurants, just in general, even just new ones in a concept, take a whole lot of time to do. So, Susie, you're looking at it from the perspective of that one guy who was still doing his own company while he was trying to help develop Noodles and Company. And yes, I think you wouldn't be able to focus, and you need to be able to focus when you start. What Ben was talking about is working as a full-time employee in the company that you're opening. And I do agree with you, Ben, that you have to have kind of a happy medium, though, because you have to be able to be there and see what's going on. But then at the same time, you have to be able to step back and be able to see the overall picture of what's happening. So I think it definitely can have its benefits in that situation.
yeah.
Yeah. But no, you're right both ways, though. In both cases, I think that's absolutely right. Um, do you think that Noodles and Company, with their new culture, do you think that they will be able to maintain that culture even with the rapid growth that they're trying to accomplish?
I think so, as long as they continue to hire, because they do a lot of hiring within, and when they open a new store, they take people from other restaurants they already have open that are successful. So I think they'll be able to keep it as long as they like continue to do that. The people who have experience from other restaurants can teach the new people coming in, and so I think they'll be able to keep it. So
Absolutely. And yes, thanks, Ben. The marketing experience that that guy had definitely was beneficial, and you can see how important it was once he actually quit his other job and focused just strictly on Noodles and Company. He helped a lot with the growth. Um,
yeah,
and so, yeah, Susie, what you were saying about the culture, I agree with you. I've been in huge companies with hundreds of restaurants where, as long as it's their main focus is their culture and the environment in the place, you can still accomplish that. You have to have people that buy in, and you have to make sure that that's your main focus. But if you do that, I think that's one of the biggest. Well, we've talked about this in other lessons. I think that's one of the biggest focuses and biggest things that help keep a restaurant successful.
yeah,
Yes, I agree with that. I think that when you have in a restaurant local people, it means more, because they know that they're dealing with people in their community, friends and family. They know that. Um, I mean, there's a couple things. They know that they want to do well for them, but then they also know that they um, don't want to not be good, and then have people that know them be like, "Why is this person a server?" or this food is terrible that this person's making. So it kind of makes you have more ownership of what you're doing.
yeah.
Um, so going back to what you said, Susie, about the first to market or best to market,
Yeah.
what do you think they should choose, or do you think they should choose first or best? And what do you think the advantages or disadvantages are of both of those things?
Well, so I think so. Obviously, there's a huge advantage in being best to market, because hopefully, if you're the best in the market, people will switch from wherever they were going before because you're better. So they always want the better food. They always want the better prices, whatever. And so there's a huge advantage in that. But like a disadvantage was um, how Kennedy said, and he didn't know if this applied to restaurants, but I think it probably does, is that people like consistency, and so they're not going to change because they're not going to go try the new one. It retained 40%, I think it was, of their like original like place, whatever. If you were the first to market, so that's a huge advantage there, is because if it retains 40% of the market, that's a huge chunk of the market that's coming to your restaurant. But disadvantages are you don't know for sure if that, because that was his marketing products, but that wasn't a restaurant, so he doesn't know for sure that he was going to keep the 40. Or yeah, the disadvantage for the being best is like people may not try yours because they're already comfortable with what they have, and they may not, they
Right.
always just continue to go there.
Ben, you have any input on that? I will be patiently waiting. I agree completely. I think Kennedy has a little bit right with not everybody wanting to come over, because a lot of people like the consistency of staying in the same place. But especially in markets that don't have a lot of competition, being best is, I think, by far more important. The reason being is because when you first open a restaurant, as long as you advertise well, and as long as you do the marketing that you need to do and let people know you're going, everyone wants to at least try it. Like if I see a new restaurant open up, typically I'll be like, I wonder if that's good or not. And obviously I'll check reviews and stuff, but if it's something that I've never heard of before, then I'll want to at least go in and take a look at it. And if you go in and realize that it is way better than the place that you went before, then you're going to take some of those guests. And that's one of the most important things about growth in a restaurant is taking guests from other places. You want to be the place, especially with the economy now, not being as great and not having a lot of extra money. When people do spend money, you want them to want to come to your restaurant instead of everything else. So if you are the best and they know you're the best and you can consistently do that, then you have more of a chance of getting, like you said, the market share from everybody else. So what helped Noodles and Company turn the corner? They were pretty bad in the beginning. Didn't think that it was going to end up being anything, and now all of a sudden they're really swinging hard and doing really well.
Well, they talked about how they revised a lot of things. They like got new bowls. I don't know what they had before, but they got like these real authentic Chinese bowls. They didn't have them wait at the counter anymore. They had them go sit down, and they brought their food out to them. They reorganized their cooking line. I don't remember what they had before versus what they had after, but they changed something in there, and so
they made everything made to order.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that changed quite a bit. I'm sure that changed the quality of the food they were eating before. Not having people wait at the counter means there's not a huge line at the counter that you're like fighting to get through to order in the first place. So those are some pretty big adjustments.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. The changing of the culture, and it wasn't just the changing of like the food and the bowls and the atmosphere. They even like painted everything, made it look nicer. That all made them better. But if they didn't change the culture, which was caring about the customer first, then they probably never would have improved. And once they did that, it was like a skyrocket. The other thing that it talks about is organizationally, they did some stuff. So they were more financially sound. They hired a CFO. They hired all these different people to make sure the organization was running the way it was supposed to. And then once they did that, they could really focus on the culture and about having like the leadership be all about the culture. So I think all those things were one of the biggest things. So speaking of that culture, every guest, every bowl, every time. That's their mantra, right? Why does every guest, every bowl, every time drive corporate profits and the corporate structure of the company?
Consistency is a pretty big deal. I mean, if they didn't do it for every guest every time, one bad review, and that changes a lot. One person sees a bad review and that's going to start a downhill spiral pretty fast. And so you have to be consistent. You have to do it every time for every person, whether it's their first time in or whether it's their 50th time in, whatever it is, you have to, every time has to be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Being in the restaurant business for so long, I cannot remember the exact percentage, but they had statistics that said for every one guest that has a bad experience, they tell 10 people, and then those 10 people tell 10 people, and then it's like a downward spiral just from one guest having a bad experience. But guests that have a good experience are much less likely to go out and tell everybody, unless it was like overwhelmingly great. If it was just a really good experience, then they're just happy that they had a good time, but they're not really going to go and say, tell the last 10 friends. So yeah, negative feedback always comes more full force than positive feedback. And yeah, it pretty much helped, set up the expectations for the company and for the restaurant. And it made it so they knew this is the standard that we have to follow. This is what's going to make everybody happy and keep them coming back. And so that's what they did. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. The people are having great experience and they're going to be return guests and eventually become regulars, which is like the most important thing in a restaurant is to have regulars that are continuously coming back because you're constantly striving for new people. But if you get people who are going to continuously come back, that's really beneficial to the company. And then, yeah, but then the the expectations for the employees is huge. I mean, they had no idea. They were like, all right, we're gonna make some noodles, put them in a pan, and then we'll just scoop them out when when we get an order. But it made a huge difference. Um, so what did it? Do you guys remember what the current teaming model is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so it talks about. Is that a finger bend? Like wait, or you're good? No, gotcha. So it talks about standardization. So obviously the whole team following the same standards, which we just talked about. Team-based performance goals and rewards. So as the team success is helping individual successes, and then hiring and firing as team decisions, which I think is really, I mean, maybe between a management team, but I've never heard of hiring, firing being anybody else's decision. But if that might be what they mean, being like all the supervisors and all the managers get together and discuss the situation, which I guess is okay. How do you guys feel about that? That being that team focused.
Hope you get a good team. That sucks. Um, I think it's okay. Yeah, as long as like the hiring and firing, yeah, that definitely needs to be managers. I don't want, I don't know, other people like in that may not be a good idea. It's gonna turn to chaos really fast. But I think it's, I mean, to be team oriented, that makes the people feel like, I know, probably safer in their environment wherever they're at, where they're cooking. They're not gonna feel like someone's gonna turn around and like stab them in the back and get them fired or something, So that would, I mean, it might make them feel safer and secure in their job.
Yeah, I think that it would definitely have that. The only thing that I would worry about is um, having friendships. Like you're a cool dude, so I'll keep you here even
Yeah.
though you're not really good at your job. That's the only thing that would worry me about the whole team thing. I guess if your bonuses or your pay raises or rates or something like that are going to be based on their performance, then maybe you would.
Yeah.
Yes, team hiring would be too hectic. That's the thing too. You're right about that bad blood too. That like people, it it goes along with what we are just saying. Like, how are you to know that people are gonna just be biased, or people are going to actually make good business decisions? And with team hiring, I mean, for us, with all the restaurants I worked at, well, the last couple, the general manager was the one who had the final decision, or the executive kitchen manager in my case. So like I would interview somebody and take them through the first interview and have them do their personality tests and stuff like that. But then it would ultimately be his decision on whether he gets hired or not. And although he trusted my opinion, that was the culture, and that was the way it was organized in our company. So they knew that the executive kitchen manager, the general managers knew the culture fit and knew exactly what the company wanted from employees. I think that everybody getting together and being like, "What'd you think of that guy?" I don't know. I don't. I don't know if that would be a good idea. Um, so they want to expand. It says, um, what what should they do for their future? How do they plan to expand? Do you remember what they said about planning? And it's not talking about the three different ways of getting money. It's talking about where are they planning to go, or what are they planning to do.
They were planning on going into Washington, like DC area, and Utah. There were couple other states I don't remember. I just
Yeah,
remember
so
those
the,
two.
the Midwest area is what they were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And then they were gonna open, what was it, like 25 new stores in the next year, and then like 2 years after it was gonna be 100 new stores. And
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily best reader, but it says that they were planning on eventually expanding to Europe, which I didn't remember reading that, but
oh,
that doesn't necessarily mean it's not in there.
yeah. Well, I wonder if that ever happened.
I don't know.
I mean, I know they expanded to Idaho. Got that one, but
Is there one in Idaho Falls?
yeah, there's one in the mall, I think, in IF, right
Okay.
next to
You said it's a good
Walmart.
place. You like it?
Well, I've never been to the ones on this side of the state. I've only gone to like one or two on my side of the state, and it's good. Yeah, I mean, it's not like super special, but it's nice. It's pretty good food. So
You should try it out sometime. Um, so yeah, I completely agree with you. That's actually the next question. What should they do? Franchising, what challenges do they face, and what are the possible strategies for growth? And so the three strategies were franchising, a joint venture, or strategic partnership. And I completely agree with franchising. I think that with the rate that they're planning on expanding, and how great of a culture organization they have, I think that franchising is fine, because you still have power. Like they when someone franchises out, they still have to do what you tell them to do. They just might be able to have their own little ideas about it. Susie, what do you think?
I think franchising was a good idea. Yeah, I mean, that would take a lot of the, because they were worried about how they were gonna find like the money to build 100 new stores, whatever. So definitely franchising would help with that aspect a lot.
Yeah, it would be difficult in the beginning because you have to like have a specific franchise person in charge of franchises, and a person that's in charge of finances for franchises and stuff like that. But once you have that all set up and you find someone that you like, that you're willing to give the franchise out to, then you don't have to deal with so much. Like, you'll be getting reports in, and you can go visit and make sure that the restaurants are running the way they're supposed to. but they have their own little ownership group that takes care of all that stuff. So not only do they help financially, but they help take some of the burden off of you as well. So we all agreed about that. Discuss organizational structure needed to support growth. We just talked about that, where they'll have to, if they do franchise out, they'll have to have all the different people that are going with that, all the people that are dealing with the franchise. I don't know. Discuss how Noodle's team concept could be an influence. I guess how it could influence which they choose to do for growth, whether it be franchising or whatnot.
Oh, well, I guess, I mean, since they're so team oriented, that would be kind of hard for them to bring all these new people in, all these new personalities in to make it work and still keep that like team feeling about it, that bonding. So that wouldn't much, but
That would make it difficult. I mean, my perspective on that is, even if you're growing and just continue to growing by yourself and you're just using strategic partners to fund it or whatever it might be, you're still going to have to find people to run all those restaurants. So you're finding 100 new general managers in the next 120 in the next 2 years. In my opinion, it's really difficult to have that many people that could be in those positions. Not everybody can do those things. And they like to promote from within, but not everybody's ready, especially not at that pace. That pace is a lot.
yeah.
That's true. That's a good idea. If they could find people that are already in their company, people that they trust, and have them run the franchises. The only thing is, if they can find people in their team that have the capital to start the franchises, because if they can't do it themselves, that's one of the reasons why they're franchising, so that other people pay for this stuff. But if they can find people that they already knows the culture and stuff like that, that would obviously be the most beneficial for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kind of already talked about a lot of this stuff, like how can organizational culture make or break a strategy in a company? That's pretty much what we've just talked about for this entire meeting so far. It's one of the most important things, period. How can teaming influence any corporate strategy? So I guess not necessarily even restaurants, just any kind of corporate strategy if you start using teaming like they are.
Teaming. Well, I mean, you have other people to bounce ideas off of and get more opinion than one if you just have like a single person working on it. So that's always a
Yeah, it's definitely better to have more opinions than less. So if everybody in the team is against it, then they can make changes for the better. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I agree with that too. Those kind of go along with each other. So if everyone's bouncing ideas off each other, if everyone has a common goal and things aren't necessarily working out the way they're supposed to, they can work together to fix those problems. I think it can make it difficult, just like in the restaurant business. I'm sure any corporate environment where you're relying on, like, everyone's making the decisions to do all these different things. I think it makes it difficult. I think having a nice structure is nice, like having a boss, having someone leaders, having someone in charge. I think too much of teams making decisions might almost be negative. So,
Yeah.
somewhat though, teams are very important.
Yes.
So, what gospel principles apply in this situation? I'll go ahead and rely on one of you two to put your input on this one.
Gospel principles rely on the situation. I'm drawing a blank. I probably shouldn't be, but
Okay, I draw blanks lots of times. I wonder if we're discussing teamwork or if they're talking about the growth, like the decisions to make.
yeah. The only thing I'm really thinking about is like family council with their teamwork. I mean, those are similar. That's maybe not a principle of the gospel, but that is a part of the gospel. So,
Yes, it is. Yeah, and Ben said, you think about ward council, the ward
yeah, there we
leadership
go.
working together to make decisions and stuff like that. No, I agree with that, and that makes sense. Not everybody, there's not really a dictatorship. I know that my bishop is very open to our suggestions and ideas. I'm in young men's now, and we always talk about stuff like that to make the right decisions. He's not like, okay, this is what we're going to do. He's like, well, what are your opinions on this situation? And I think if a corporate team worked the exact same way, that would really be beneficial to the company. If everybody was like, let's figure this out together and let's just do what's right for the company.
Selfish in that area.
Yeah, absolutely not. Especially if it's affecting your job, your career, and stuff like that. It's the same thing, affecting your how the things that you do in your ward. It's the same thing. It says, do you think there's any connections between the reading that we did this week and the case?
The reading we did this week in the case. What if I haven't finished the reading yet?
Then we would probably be in the same situation. Oh, my computer. Awesome. Well, that will be something that we can add on to the reading discussion at the end.
There we go. Yes.
So figure it out.
We'll relate it to it.
So let's make that. We'll relate it to the similarities between the case study and the reading.
Yeah.
So, just as a conclusion for what we talked about, Noodles and Company, we all are kind of on the same page with franchising, and we think that's important. If they can find the right people, I think it has to be the people that you have to bring in would have to be a good culture fit. So, for instance, I worked for Applebee's for only a year because it was terrible, but unless you like to be a microwave chef. But the Rose Group was the franchise that I worked for, and they ran things exactly like Applebee's would want them to. They kind of even went a little bit deeper with guest satisfaction and with safety net and stuff like that. than what that corporate Applebee's wanted them to. So if you find a franchisee that would actually do things the way you want to, I think that it would really be beneficial for the growth of your company, as long as you can maintain the culture. And we talked about teaming and how the negatives and positives of it. But I think all in all, from what I got out of our discussion, was that if Kennedy wants to expand at the rate that he wants to expand at, then it can be done, but he has to not lose the culture, and it has to be franchising out.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything about the discussion or to add?
Nope.
No problem at all. I'm sure your mic will be good next time. Most people would have just quit, so you still participated even without your microphone. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. Well, I guess that's everything. We're finishing a little bit early, but I'll get the link emailed out to you guys, and then we will go from there. So next week we don't have a group meeting, and then so we'll meet on Thursday of the following week at 1:45.
Yes, yep, and I'm in charge of that one, so.
Perfect. Well, I'll talk to you guys then.
All right.
Okay, see ya.
See ya.